Hey, y'all. My name is Willie Lawson, and welcome to the Morning Report. There was a time not long ago when being a consumer in America required very little thought. You bought what you liked, you watched what entertained you, you shopped where it was convenient. Decisions were made based on price, quality, and habit. You didn't have to ask yourself what company believed, what a company believed. You didn't have to wonder what a league stood for. You just participated. That time has passed. Today, nearly every major institution has stepped into something far deeper than commerce. Corporations speak, leagues signal, brands must take positions. And whether they intended to or not, they invite the people who support them to participate in those positions as well. The transaction is no longer just economic. It is at some level moral. And once that shift happens, the questions change. It isn't any longer enough to ask, do I do I like this? The more pressing question becomes, does this align with what I believe? For many people, especially for those who have convictions of faith, that question is no longer theoretical. It's immediate. It's personal, and it's unavoidable. Some respond to this shift with frustration, others with anger. Many people simply ignore it. But there's another response. It's quieter, it's more deliberate, and ultimately more powerful. It is the response of alignment. Alignment doesn't begin with protest, and it doesn't require a crowd. It doesn't depend on agreement. It depends and begins with a decision. I'll go. And that's how it starts. For instance, when the leadership of Starbucks made statements that suggested that certain beliefs, pro life beliefs, were not welcome in their stores, some people debated the meaning, other people minimized it. Still, some argued over whether it was taken out of context. But for some, like myself, the situation didn't require any extended analysis. The line had been crossed. And so I left. For a while, my family and I, after church, would stop by our local Starbucks for our dessert drinks. That may have something to do with my sugar fast. uh, we didn't go every Sunday, but it was one of the things that we did after evening service. We all went to evening service, so it's something we do after evening service on our way home. We don't do that anymore. It was easy. I just don't go. The same pattern repeated itself in other places. Y'all remember when Target adopted policies that for many raised serious concerns, where they were, allowing and fighting for grown men to dress and try things on in close proximity to young girls. But everything was cool, right? You remember? There again was a range of responses. Some people protested, some people organized, some dismissed the concerns entirely. But others made the same simple decision that I made. We didn't argue. We didn't negotiate. We just simply stopped going. There's something almost unsettling about how quiet that decision is. It doesn't seek attention. It doesn't ask permission. It doesn't attempt to persuade and try to get a whole bunch of other people to do it. I simply acted. And yet, with that simplicity, there is a clarity that is difficult to ignore because it's not outrage, it's alignment. Because outrage demands that others change. We see a lot of that. Alignment begins with changing myself. Outrage is loud and often temporary, and you see a lot of people who I share political and moral and spiritual beliefs with on internet, and they're yelling all the time, but they burn out. Alignment is quiet, and when done consistently, it becomes a way of life. Now, it's really easy to misunderstand, so I don't want you to misunderstand this. In a culture that thrives on reaction, any act of withdrawal is quickly labeled as anger or overreach. But that's not what this is. That interpretation misses what is actually happening. This is not about punishing companies. It's about refusing to participate in something that feels incompatible with my deeply held beliefs. Because for years, many people operated under the assumption that in certain areas of life, they were neutral. Sports was one of them, entertainment was one. We could have these beliefs and we could all go to the movies, right? We could have these beliefs and we could all go watch a baseball game, right? We could have these beliefs and we could all go by a coffee shop and have a coffee after the movie, right? But neutrality has proven to be an illusion. When leagues like the NBA and the NFL make public statements, promote causes, and enforce boundaries around acceptable speech, they move beyond just simple entertainment. They actually become participants in the culture itself. Once that happens, the role of the consumer changes too. Watching is no longer just watching. Buying is no longer just buying. Because participation begins to carry meaning, whether intended or not. This is where the tension emerges. Because if participation carries meaning, then it also carries responsibility. And for those who take their beliefs seriously, that responsibility cannot be ignored indefinitely. Still, not all institutions present the same challenge. Now, there are places where disagreement exists, but where space remains for differing convictions. For instance, the NFL, for many, an example of this complexity, this weirdness. There are elements within the league that some Christians and conservatives strongly disagree with. The Bad Bunny halftime show, right? In recent history. And all the George Floyd stuff, right? All the stuff on the helmet and all this, all the kneel, there's kneeling before the game. But here's the other thing. There are players kneeling in prayer after the game. Coaches and players speaking openly about their faith. In post-game interviews, well, you scored 27 touchdowns in the game. Cletus, and he goes, before I get started, I'd like to thank my Jesus Christ, my Lord and Savior, because without him, you see this all the time. Now, what's really kind of weird is that a lot of people go, well, you keep your faith, you keep your religion to yourself. Yeah. Except, other people don't keep their beliefs to themselves. So I think it's great. There are players who are speaking openly about their faith. Interviews where references to Christ are made without hesitation. Moments where belief is not hidden but expressed. That matters because it suggests that even within a massive and influential organization, there is still room for those convictions to exist. So the question becomes more nuanced. It is no longer simply, do I agree with everything here? Few people would answer yes to that question anywhere. Instead, the question becomes, is there still space for what I believe to be present and expressed? That's a different threshold and explains why some people who have walked away from other institutions remain engaged in the NFL, even if cautiously. The NBA, on the other hand, is often perceived differently. Whether entirely accurate or not, the perception exists that is more tightly aligned to one cultural direction and with less visible room for dissenting views. For some, it feels like an environment where stepping outside of the accepted narratives carries a greater risk. Perception matters because people do not make decisions based solely on official statements. They respond to tone, people respond to signals, they respond to overall environment. And when that environment feels closed, people don't always protest. They just simply leave. That raises an important question that is often overlooked. How much influence does the average consumer truly have with these institutions? It is a comforting idea to believe that staying engaged allows one to shape the direction of a company or league. But for most people, that influence is minimal at best. They're not in the room where the decisions are being made, or there would have been no Bad Bunny halftime show. They are not setting policies or guiding messaging. They are participating. And participating over time becomes support. That distinction matters because if participation equals support, then withdrawing participation is not an act of aggression. It's just an act of honesty. It is a refusal to send a signal that does not reflect one's true convictions. And this is where the cost becomes real. Walking away is not always convenient. The store you shop, the store you shop visiting may be close to home. The product you give up may be one you enjoy. The entertainment you leave behind may have been part of your routine for years. There's a cost. But every value systems carry a cost. The question is not whether there will be a cost, but which cost are you willing to bear? The cost of inconvenience or the cost of compromise? Pastor Rob Thompson once said that whenever we compromise to keep, we will someday lose. Because we live in a culture designed to keep people passive, to keep them consuming without thinking, engaging without questioning, participating without reflecting. The moment you begin to ask whether your actions align with your beliefs, you step outside that pattern. You move from passive to deliberate. And that shift is where real change begins. This is not a call to withdraw from the world. It isn't. It is not a demand to disengage from every institution that presents disagreement. It is a challenge to think more carefully about what participation means. Not every situation will lead to the same decision. Some will walk away. Others will remain engaged. Both can be done with integrity if they are done intentionally. What cannot be sustained indefinitely is unexamined participation. Because once you recognize that your time and that your attention and that your money are not neutral, that they communicate something, you are faced with a choice. You can ignore that reality or you can respond to it. In the end, this is not about corporations or leagues. It's about you. It's about what you believe. It's about what you are willing to support. And it's about whether your actions reflect those beliefs in a consistent and meaningful way. You don't need to boycott. You don't need permission. You don't need consensus. What you need is clarity. What you need is consistency. And what you need is a backbone. My name is Willie Lawson. Welcome to the Morning Report. Until we see you again, go out there and learn something, love somebody, and for goodness sakes, y'all take care of yourself. We will see you when we see you. Bye bye now.